a $3 strawberry milkshake. That was the price of Sabine Hoffman's entire future, though she didn't know it at the time. In a world where billionaires launch rockets to Mars and waitresses count pennies to keep the lights on, the line between ruin and fortune is often thinner than a frayed apron string. Sabine wasn't looking for a savior when she saw the shivering boy in the oversized coat. She was just looking for a way to survive Tuesday. But the muddy sneakers tucked under table 4 didn't belong to a runaway. They belonged to the heir of an empire, and the man hunting for him was about to turn the sleepy town of Oak Creek upside down. The neon sign of the Rusty Anchor flickered with a dying buzz, the letter R permanently burnt out, leaving the diner to announce itself as the Usty Anchor. It was fitting, Sabine thought. Everything in her life felt a little rusty, a little broken, and hanging on by a single fraying wire. Sabine Hoffman wiped the counter with a rag that smelled faintly of bleach and stale coffee. Outside, the October rain in Seattle wasn't just falling, it was punishing the pavement. It was the kind of grey, relentless drizzle that seeped into your bones and made the concept of warmth feel like a distant memory. She checked the clock. 8:47 p.m. 13 minutes until her shift ended. 13 minutes until she had to walk out into that rain and face the 3-mile trek to her apartment, if she could still call it that. In her apron pocket, a crumpled piece of paper burned against her hip. It was an eviction notice from her landlord, Mr. Henderson. Final notice, it read in bold red letters that seemed to scream at her even when unfolded. She was 2 months behind. Her car had died 3 weeks ago, forcing her to sell it for scrap, just to pay for her mother's insulin. And now the choice was simple and cruel: pay the rent or keep her diabetic mother alive. She had chosen her mother. The consequence was that in 48 hours they would be on the street. "Hey, Space Cadet!" The voice snapped like a whip. Sabine flinched, dropping the rag. Todd, the night manager, loomed over her. Todd was a man who wore too much cologne and wielded his tiny amount of power like a broadsword. He had greased back hair and a stain on his tie that had been there since the Bush administration. "You plan on staring at the wall all night, or are you going to refill the ketchup bottles?" Todd sneered, tapping his watch. "I'm not paying you to daydream about winning the lottery." "I'm sorry, Todd," Sabine said, her voice quiet. She kept her eyes down. In the service industry, eye contact was often interpreted as defiance. "I was just checking the time. Time is money, Hoffman, and you don't have enough of either." He laughed at his own joke, a wet, snorting sound. "Table 4 needs wiping. Some kid just sat down. Make sure he actually buys something or kick him out. We aren't a homeless shelter." Sabine nodded and moved out from behind the counter. She grabbed her ordering pad, though her hands were trembling slightly. She was 24 years old, but tonight she felt 80. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and the hollow pit in her stomach was a reminder that she hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. She usually ate the leftovers from plates that came back to the kitchen, but tonight the customers had licked their platters clean. She walked over to table 4, the booth furthest from the door. Tucked away in the shadows near the restrooms, the boy couldn't have been more than 7 years old. That was the first thing that struck her: his size. He was tiny, drowning in a navy blue raincoat that looked expensive, but was caked in fresh mud. His hood was pulled up, casting a shadow over his face, but Sabine could see a tuft of sandy blonde hair sticking out, plastered to his forehead by the rain. He was staring at the laminated menu as if it contained the secrets of the universe, but his eyes weren't moving. He was shaking. A subtle, rhythmic tremor that shook the water droplets off his coat. "Hi there," Sabine said, pitching her voice to be soft, The way she used to talk to her little brother before he passed. "Rough night out there, huh?" The boy didn't look up. His hands, small and pale, were clenched tight around the edge of the table. His knuckles were white. Sabine glanced back at the counter. Todd was watching her, arms crossed, waiting for her to eject the non-paying loiterer. She looked back at the boy. He wasn't a street kid, not in the traditional sense. His shoes were high-end sneakers, though ruined by mud. There was no grime under his fingernails, but there was a terror radiating off him that Sabine recognized. It was the look of someone waiting for a blow to land. "I'm Sabine," she tried again, stepping a little closer. "I can get you something warm. Hot chocolate? Maybe some fries?" The boy flinched when she mentioned food. He slowly lifted his head. Sabine's breath hitched. The boy's eyes were a startling, piercing blue, but they were rimmed with red. He looked exhausted, haunted. On his left cheek, there was a small scratch, fresh and oozing a tiny bead of blood. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He closed it, swallowed hard, and then pointed a trembling finger at the picture of a strawberry milkshake on the menu. "A strawberry shake?" Sabine asked. He nodded once, fast and jerky. "Okay," Sabine smiled, ignoring the sinking feeling in her gut. "One strawberry shake coming up." "Whipped cream?" He hesitated, then nodded again. "You got it." Sabine walked back to the counter. She knew what was coming. "Did he pay?" Todd asked, blocking her path to the ice cream machine. "He's a kid, Todd. He's ordering a shake." "I didn't ask what he ordered. I asked if he showed you money." Todd leaned in, the smell of cheap musk overpowering the smell of fries. "Policy, Hoffman. No cash, no service, especially for strays." "He's not a stray. He's well dressed. His parents are probably just parking the car," Sabine lied smoothly. She was a terrible liar usually, but desperation gave her talent. "I saw a Mercedes pulling in." Todd narrowed his eyes, skeptical. "If he doesn't pay, it's coming out of your tips. And considering you've made about $4 tonight, I'd be careful." "I'll handle it," Sabine said, pushing past him. She made the milkshake with extra care. She put in 3 scoops of ice cream instead of the regulation 2. She piled the whipped cream high and added 2 cherries. It was a small rebellion, a tiny act of defiance against the cruelty of the world. When she returned to table 4, the boy had his head on the table, buried in his arms. He jerked up when the glass clinked against the formica. "Here you go," Sabine whispered. "Double cherries, top secret. Don't tell the boss." For a second, just a split second, the terror in the boy's eyes receded. He looked at the milkshake, then at Sabine. It was a look of pure, unadulterated gratitude that hit Sabine harder than the eviction notice. He grabbed the straw and drank like he hadn't seen liquid in days. "My shift is almost over," Sabine said, checking her surroundings to make sure Todd was distracted by his phone. "Are you waiting for someone? Your mum or dad?" The boy stopped drinking. He went rigid. He shook his head violently. Okay, Sabine soothed, raising her hands. "No parents. That's fine. Are you safe?" He didn't answer. He just went back to the milkshake, sucking it down with a desperate intensity. Sabine's heart broke. She knew she should call the police. A 7-year-old alone at 9 p.m. in a thunderstorm was a police matter, but looking at his fear, she sensed that calling the authorities might scare him off into the rain, and out there, he wouldn't survive the night. She decided to let him finish the drink first. She reached into her pocket and touched the 3 crumpled $1 bills she had made in tips. It was all she had to buy bread and eggs for her mother tomorrow. She looked at the boy, then at the register. $3. She pulled the money out and slipped it onto the table, covering it with a napkin. "Listen," she whispered. "When you're done, just leave the money on the table, okay? You paid. You're a paying customer. Nobody can kick you out." The boy looked at the money, then up at her. His eyes welled up. He reached out and, for a fleeting moment, his cold fingers brushed against her rough, work-worn hand. "Thank you," he croaked. His voice was raspy, unused. "You're welcome, little man," Sabine said. She turned to go back to clean the grill, unaware that the black SUV idling across the street had just turned off its headlights, and the man inside was watching Table 4 through a telephoto lens. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof of the rusty anchor like 1,000 nervous fingers. Sabine was scrubbing the grill, the heat searing her face, but her mind was fixed on Table 4. Every few seconds, she glanced over her shoulder. The boy, Leo, she decided to call him in her head because he looked like a lion cub lost in a storm, was scraping the bottom of the milkshake glass with his spoon. He was stalling. He didn't want to go back outside. Todd was in the back office, likely counting the till or arguing with his ex-wife on the phone, which gave Sabine a window of peace. She finished the grill and moved to the mop bucket. As she wrung out the grey water, the front door chimed. A gust of wind blew rain into the diner, followed by a man. He wasn't a customer. Sabine knew the look of the locals, tired truckers, insomniac students, factory workers. This man was different. He stood 6'3", wearing a black tactical raincoat that cost more than Sabine's annual salary. He had a buzz cut, a scar running through his left eyebrow, and he moved with the predatory grace of a jungle cat. He didn't look at the menu. He scanned the room. His eyes swept over Sabine, dismissing her instantly, and locked onto the booth in the back. Sabine saw Leo stiffen. The boy didn't turn around. He just slid down in the booth, trying to make himself invisible. The man started walking toward the back. He didn't walk like a concerned parent. He walked like a retrieval team. Sabine's instinct screamed. It was the same instinct that told her which streets to avoid walking home at night. She dropped the mop. It clattered loudly against the bucket. "Sir," Sabine called out, stepping into the aisle, effectively blocking the direct path to Table 4. "Can I help you? Seat for one?" The man stopped. He looked down at her, annoyed. His eyes were cold, professional, dead. "I'm looking for someone." "We're about to close," Sabine said, crossing her arms. She was 5'4" and weighed 110 pounds soaking wet, but she planted her feet. "Kitchen is closed." "I'm not hungry," the man said. His voice was gravel. He stepped to the side to bypass her. Sabine sidestepped with him. "Sir, you can't just harass customers. If you're not ordering, you need to leave." The commotion drew Todd out of the office. "What the hell is going on out here? Hoffman, why is the mop on the floor?" The stranger ignored Sabine and looked at Todd. He reached into his jacket. Sabine tensed, fearing a weapon, but he pulled out a wallet. He flipped it open, flashing a badge, but he closed it too fast for Sabine to read it clearly. It looked gold. Private security? Police? "I'm collecting the boy," the man said to Todd. "He's a runaway." Todd's face went from angry to ingratiating in a nanosecond. He saw the expensive coat, the authority. Oh, I see. A runaway? Hoffman, get out of the gentleman's way. I knew that kid was trouble. "He's terrified," Sabine snapped, not moving. She turned to the man. "Are you his father?" The man's jaw tightened. "I work for his father." "Now move. You're interfering with a custody matter." "He's shaking," Sabine said, her voice rising. "He's scared of you. I'm not letting you take him until I see some identification that proves you have guardianship." "Hoffman," Todd roared, "you're fired. Get your stuff and get out. Sir, I apologize. She's hysterical. Fired. Sabine felt the blood drain from her face. The eviction notice. The insulin. Todd, you can't. I just did. You're causing a scene with a respectable man. Get out. The stranger used the distraction. He shoved past Sabine, not violently, but with the irresistible force of a moving wall. He reached table 4. Leo, the man said. Time to go. The boy, Leo, scrambled backward, pressing his back against the cold window. He kicked out, knocking the milkshake glass onto the floor. It shattered. No! Leo screamed. It was the first sound he had made. No, no, no! Don't make this difficult, the man hissed, reaching for the boy's arm. Sabine didn't think. She reacted. She grabbed the pot of coffee she had just brewed, steaming hot, from the warmer on the counter. Let him go, she yelled. The man turned, sneering. Put that down, you stupid girl. I said let him go. Or what? Or I call the cops, Sabine bluffed. They're already on their way. I pressed the panic button under the counter. There was no panic button. The rusty anchor was too cheap for security systems. But the lie made the man pause. He looked at the window, then at his watch. He seemed to calculate the risk. A public scene with police involvement wasn't part of his plan. He released Leo's arm. He smoothed his jacket, staring at Sabine with a look that promised retribution. You have no idea what you've just done, he said quietly. You think you're helping? You just signed your own death warrant. He turned to Todd. If she's here when I come back with the authorities, I'm suing this establishment for harboring a fugitive. She's leaving, Todd squeaked. She's gone. Hoffman, get out! Now! The man turned and walked out into the rain, pulling his phone out as he exited, dialing a number. Silence descended on the diner. The only sound was the rain and Todd's heavy breathing. You crazy witch, Todd whispered. You just cost me a lawsuit. Get out. Don't even clock out. Just go. Sabine stood trembling, the coffee pot still in her hand. She looked at Leo. The boy was hyperventilating, staring at the door where the man had vanished. Come on, Sabine said, her voice shaking. She put the coffee pot down. She untied her apron and threw it on the counter. We can't stay here. He's coming back. You can't take him, Todd yelled. That's kidnapping. He's not safe here, Todd. You saw that guy. Sabine ran to the booth. Leo, can you run? The boy nodded. Okay, we're going to the back exit, through the kitchen. She grabbed his small hand. It was ice cold. They sprinted through the greasy kitchen, past the dishwasher, and kicked open the heavy steel door that led to the alleyway. The cold rain hit them instantly, soaking them to the skin in seconds. Where are we going? Leo asked, his voice barely audible over the storm. Sabine looked down at him. She had no job, no car, no money, an eviction notice in her pocket. And now she had a fugitive child and a dangerous man hunting them. I don't know, Sabine said, pulling him close under the overhang of the dumpster. But we have to keep moving. She didn't know that the man in the diner wasn't the police. She didn't know he was the head of security for Ashton Kingsman, the billionaire tech mogul who had been tearing the city apart looking for his son. And she certainly didn't know that Ashton Kingsman was currently sitting in a penthouse 3 miles away, watching a GPS dot on a screen stop moving right behind the rusty anchor. Sabine took a breath, grabbed Leo's hand tighter, and ran into the dark. The journey to Sabine's apartment was a blur of neon lights reflected in puddles, and the constant, chilling splash of passing cars. They couldn't afford a cab, and Sabine was terrified that the bus drivers might recognize the boy if an amber alert had already gone out. So they walked. They stuck to the shadows, navigating the labyrinth of alleyways that cut through the city's underbelly. Sabine kept a tight grip on Leo's hand. He didn't complain. Not once, even though his expensive sneakers were likely ruined and his teeth were chattering loud enough to be heard over the traffic. "We're almost there," Sabine promised, though her own lungs were burning. Her apartment complex, The Meadows, was a cruel joke of a name. It was a concrete block situated between a chemical plant and a highway off-ramp. There were no meadows, only patches of dead grass and a dumpster that was permanently overflowing. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken since 2019. Sabine fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking from adrenaline and cold, before finally pushing the door open. "It's not much," Sabine murmured, ushering Leo inside and quickly locking the deadbolt, the chain, and the bottom lock. Leo stepped in and looked around. It was a single room divided by a hanging bedsheet. The kitchen was a hot plate and a mini-fridge. The living room was a stained sofa and a small TV from the 90s. The air smelled of boiled cabbage and rubbing alcohol. To a boy who grew up in a penthouse with a view of the skyline, this must have looked like a prison cell. Is this where you hide?" Leo asked, his voice small. "It's where I live," Sabine corrected gently. "Take off that wet coat. I'll get you a towel." As she moved to the bathroom, which was just a closet with a shower head, a hacking cough erupted from behind the bedsheet. Leo jumped, hiding behind Sabine. "It's okay," Sabine whispered. "It's just my mum." She pulled back the sheet. A frail woman lay in a bed that took up most of the space. Her skin was the color of parchment, and her eyes were sunken. Martha Hoffman looked 20 years older than her age, worn down by a life that had never given her a break. "Sabine," Martha rasped, squinting in the dim light. "You're home early. Did you bring dinner?" The question hit Sabine like a physical blow. The $3 she had given Leo for the milkshake was the dinner money. I brought a guest, Mom," Sabine deflected, stepping aside to reveal the shivering boy. Martha tried to sit up, confusion clouding her gaze. "A guest? Sabine, we don't have." She stopped, seeing the quality of the boy's clothes, even through the mud. "Who is this?" "This is Leo. He needed a place to stay for a bit. He got lost in the storm." Sabine went to the mini-fridge to check her mother's insulin. There was 1 vial left. Just 1. And it was half empty. She felt the panic rising in her throat, a suffocating tide. If she didn't get money by tomorrow, the rent wouldn't matter, because her mother wouldn't be here to need a roof. She forced a smile and turned back to Leo. "Are you hungry? I can make toast. We have cinnamon sugar." Leo looked at the woman in the bed, then at the empty kitchen counter. He was young, but he wasn't stupid. He saw the poverty. He saw the eviction notice that Sabine had tossed onto the wobbly coffee table. He saw the despair etched into the peeling wallpaper. "I'm not hungry," Leo lied. His stomach growled loudly, betraying him. Sabine's heart squeezed. "Toast it is. And hot tea." As they sat on the floor, there were no chairs, eating the dry toast. Sabine watched Leo. He ate with the manners of a prince, careful not to get crumbs on the floor. "Leo," Sabine started softly. "That man at the diner, he said he worked for your father. Why were you so scared of him?" Leo stopped chewing. He stared at the glowing coil of the electric heater Sabine had plugged in near his feet. "Rooker," Leo whispered. "His name is Rooker." "Okay. Why are you scared of Rooker?" "He locks me in the room," Leo said, his voice trembling. When Dad is away. Rooker says I'm a distraction. He says if I make noise, Dad will send me away to boarding school in Switzerland. He says Dad hates looking at me because I look like Mum." Sabine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "Where is your mum, Leo?" "She went to heaven 3 years ago," Leo said simply. "Dad has been sad ever since. He works all the time. He builds the big robots. He never comes home." "Robots?" Sabine frowned. "Tech," Leo corrected himself, using a word that sounded too adult for his mouth. "Kingsman Tech." Sabine dropped her mug. It didn't break, but tea splashed over her hand. She didn't feel the burn. "Kingsman?" she choked out. "Your dad is Ashton Kingsman." Everyone knew Ashton Kingsman. He was the modern Howard Hughes, the brooding genius behind the world's most advanced AI and robotics. He was the richest man on the continent. He was also known to be reclusive, cold, and utterly ruthless in business. "He's going to be so mad I ran away." Leo started to cry, silent tears tracking through the dirt on his face. "Ruka said if I ever left the house, Dad would stop loving me completely." Sabine moved instantly, pulling the boy into a hug. He felt fragile, like a bird. "That's not true," she whispered fiercely into his hair. "No dad stops loving their kid. Ruka is a liar. He's a bad man." But as she held him, Sabine's mind raced. She had kidnapped Ashton Kingsman's son. Not intentionally, but that's how it would look. Ruka, the security guard, would spin the story to save his own skin. He would tell Kingsman that a crazy waitress snatched the boy. She looked at the eviction notice. She looked at her dying mother. And she looked at the billionaire heir, sobbing in her arms. "We have to get you back to him," Sabine said, pulling back. "But not through Ruka. We have to talk to your dad directly." "We can't," Leo sniffled. "He's in the tower." "No one gets in the tower." "We'll see about that," Sabine said, though she had no idea how she was going to breach the most secure building in the city. "But first we sleep. Tomorrow, we fight." She didn't know that the fight had already begun. The Kingsman Tower pierced the Seattle skyline like a shard of black obsidian. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors, a fortress of glass and steel that looked down on the city like a god judging an anthill. The air inside was recycled, purified, and kept at a constant 68 degrees. It was silent, save for the hum of servers. Ashton Kingsman stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the rain-lashed city. He was 35, but looked older. His face was sharp, angular, and handsome in a severe, terrifying way. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than the Rusty Anchor diner was worth. He held a glass of scotch in his hand, but he wasn't drinking it. He was squeezing the glass so hard his knuckles were white. "Repeat that," Ashton said. His voice was low, a baritone rumble that vibrated in the massive, empty room. Ruka stood 10 feet behind him, head bowed, hands clasped behind his back. He was wet, muddy, and sporting a fresh bruise on his ego. "The subject was located at a diner in the industrial district, sir," Ruka lied smoothly. "I attempted to initiate the retrieval protocol. I had him. But there was an accomplice." Ashton turned slowly. His eyes were the same piercing blue as Leo's, but where Leo's were full of fear, Ashton's were full of ice. An accomplice? A woman, waitress, unstable. She attacked me, sir. Scalding liquid. She created a diversion. She seemed to know who Leo was. She was waiting for him. Ruka was an expert at spin. He knew that if he admitted a 100-pound waitress had bluffed him and escaped, Ashton would fire him. Or worse. But if he painted it as a targeted kidnapping, a calculated extraction, he kept his job. "She took him?" Ashton asked. The glass in his hand cracked. A spiderweb fracture appeared, but it didn't shatter. "Yes, sir. She dragged him out the back. I lost them in the alleys. They had a route planned. It It looks like a ransom job, Mr. Kingsman. Ashton threw the glass against the far wall. It exploded with the sound of a gunshot. "Get the car," Ashton commanded. "Sir, the police are—" "I don't care about the police," Ashton roared, his composure snapping. "My son is out there with a predator, a woman who knows who he is, who knows what she wants. Money, leverage." He walked to his desk, a massive slab of black marble. He tapped the surface, and it lit up, a holographic interface shimmering into existence. "Activate the grid," Ashton ordered the AI. "Grid activation requires level alpha clearance," a computerized voice responded. "Privacy laws regarding civilian surveillance." "Override," Ashton snarled. "Authorization, Kingsman Alpha 1. Access every camera in a 5-mile radius of that diner. Traffic cams, ATM cams, convenience store security feeds. Everything. Run facial recognition. Find my son." "Processing," the AI chirped. Ashton leaned over the desk, his breathing heavy. He closed his eyes and saw Leo's face. The last time they had spoken was 3 days ago. Ashton had been on a conference call with Tokyo. Leo had come in, showing him a drawing of a spaceship. Ashton had waved him away. "Not now, Leo. I'm working." The guilt was a physical pain in his chest, sharper than a knife. He had buried himself in work to avoid the pain of losing his wife, ignoring the living piece of her that was wandering the halls of this empty penthouse. And now, someone had taken him. "Sir," Rooker said cautiously, "if it is a ransom, we should wait for the call." "I'm not waiting." Ashton straightened his cuffs. He walked to a wall panel which slid open to reveal a gun rack. He didn't take a gun. He took a satellite phone. "I want the security team mobilized, every man we have, and call the mayor. Tell him I'm tearing his city apart, block by block, until I find my son. If any cop tries to stop my private team, I will buy the police department and fire them." "Yes, sir." "And Rooker?" "Sir." "Find out who she is," Ashton said, his eyes burning with a dark, dangerous promise. "Find this waitress. I want to know her name, her history, and exactly where she lives. Because when I find her, she is going to wish she had never been born." The AI pinged. "Match found," the computer announced. "Traffic camera 4B, 9:15 p.m. 2 subjects moving east on Henderson Street." An image popped up. It was grainy and dark, but clear enough. A woman in a soaked waitress uniform, holding the hand of a small boy in a muddy coat. She was looking back over her shoulder, her face terrified. "Zoom in on her," Ashton commanded. The image pixelated, then sharpened. Sabine's face filled the screen. She looked exhausted, desperate, and protective? Ashton didn't see the protectiveness. He only saw the thief who had his world in her hands. "Run her face," Ashton said. "Sabine Hoffman," the AI replied. "Age 24. Employment, the Rusty Anchor. Financial status, critical. Eviction filed yesterday. Credit score, 420. "She's desperate," Rooker whispered, pouring poison in Ashton's ear. "Desperate people do dangerous things. She's broke, sir. She saw a golden ticket walking into her diner." Ashton stared at Sabine's face on the screen. "Sabine Hoffman," he murmured, memorizing the features of his enemy. "Let's go pay Ms. Hoffman a visit." He grabbed his coat and stormed toward the elevator, a titan descending from Olympus to wreak havoc on the mortal world, completely unaware that the thief he was hunting was the only person who had shown his son kindness in years. The dawn did not bring light to the meadows. It only brought a grayer shade of gloom. Inside the apartment, the air was thick with tension. Sabine hadn't slept. She sat on the floor, her back against the peeling wall, watching the front door. Leo was curled up on the rug, wrapped in 3 blankets, sleeping the fitful sleep of the exhausted. Martha was coughing again, a wet, rattling sound that made Sabine's chest ache. The insulin was gone. They had hours, maybe less, before her blood sugar spiked to dangerous levels. "Sabine," Martha wheezed, her voice barely a whisper. "Who is the boy?" "He's a friend, Mom." "Just rest," Sabine soothed, checking her phone. No service. She hadn't paid the bill. She was cut off from the world. Suddenly the building shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a rhythmic, thumping vibration that rattled the single window pane in its frame. The sound grew louder, a heavy whoop, whoop, whoop that Sabine recognized from movies. She crawled to the window and peeked through the blinds. Her breath caught in her throat. 3 black SUVs were screeching to a halt in the parking lot below, boxing in the overflowing dumpster. Men in tactical gear were spilling out, moving with terrifying precision. Above them, a helicopter hovered low, its downdraft flattening the dead grass in the courtyard. "Oh my God," Sabine whispered. "They found us." "Who found us?" Martha asked, panic rising in her voice. "Police!" A voice boomed from a megaphone outside, amplified to a deafening volume. "Occupant of apartment 3B, we have the building surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Leo woke up with a scream. He scrambled backward, knocking over the heater. "It's Rooker. He's here." "It's not just Rooker," Sabine said, her mind racing. "It's an army." She grabbed Leo. "Listen to me. No matter what happens, you tell the truth, okay? You have to be brave." "I'm scared," Leo sobbed, clutching her waist. "Open the door." The shout came from the hallway now. Heavy boots pounded on the stairs. Sabine backed away from the door, pushing Leo behind her and standing in front of her mother's bed. She grabbed the only weapon she had, a heavy cast-iron skillet from the hot plate. It was pathetic against tactical teams, but she wasn't going down without a swing. Crash. The door didn't just open, it exploded inward. The wood splintered around the lock, and the door flew off its hinges, slamming onto the floor. Flashlights cut through the gloom, blinding Sabine. Red laser dots danced across her chest and forehead. "Drop the weapon! Down on the ground!" "Don't shoot!" Sabine screamed, shielding Leo with her body. "There's a child in here! Don't shoot!" Men in black armor flooded the tiny room, weapons raised. They were huge, faceless, terrifying. Then the sea of black uniforms parted. Ashton Kingsman walked in. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like an executioner. He wore a long, dark coat, and his face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. Rooker was right behind him, looking smug and dangerous. Ashton's eyes scanned the room, the filth, the hanging sheet, the sick woman in the bed, and landed on Sabine. "Where is he?" Ashton demanded. His voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than the shouting soldiers. Sabine didn't lower the pan. "He's not a hostage, you maniac. He's a child." "Daddy!" Leo peeked out from behind Sabine's legs. Ashton's face crumbled for a split second. "Leo!" He took a step forward. "Come here, Leo. Come to Daddy. Step away from her." Leo didn't move. He gripped Sabine's apron tighter. Ashton stopped, confused. Rooker leaned in, whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She's got a hold on him, sir. Stockholm Syndrome, or she threatened him. Look at the weapon in her hand." Ashton's gaze hardened again. He looked at Sabine with pure hatred. "Miss Hoffman, you have 5 seconds to drop that pan and release my son, or I will have my men open fire. You kidnapped a minor. You demanded a ransom." "I didn't demand anything," Sabine yelled, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "I bought him a milkshake. He was alone. He was terrified of him." She pointed the skillet at Rooker. "Lies," Rooker spat. "She's a hustler, sir. Look at this place. She saw a payday." 3, Ashton counted. "Please," Sabine begged, not for herself, but for the truth. "Ask your son. Just ask him." 2, "Daddy, stop!" Leo screamed, stepping out in front of Sabine. He spread his small arms wide, shielding the waitress from his own father. The room went deathly silent. The soldiers lowered their rifles slightly. Ashton froze. His son was protecting the kidnapper? "Leo, move!" Ashton commanded, his voice shaking. "No!" Leo yelled. "She saved me. Ruka is the bad man. Ruka hurt me. Sabine gave me her dinner money." The words hung in the stale air. Ashton blinked. The cold rage began to fracture, replaced by confusion. "What did you say?" "He's confused, sir," Ruka said quickly, stepping forward. "Trauma does this. I'll grab the boy." "Don't you touch him." Sabine swung the skillet, missing Ruka's nose by an inch. Ruka recoiled, hand going to his holster. "She's armed. I'm taking the shot." "Stand down!" Ashton roared. The power in his voice shook the walls. He looked at Ruka, then at Sabine, and finally at his son. He saw the way Leo was looking at Ruka, with pure, unadulterated terror. And he saw the way Leo was touching Sabine, with trust. Ashton held up a hand. "Everyone out. Now." "Sir, security protocol," Ruka started. "I said out!" Ashton bellowed. "Wait in the hall. Ruka, you stay!" The tactical team filed out, leaving the door hanging off its hinges. The room suddenly felt very small, with just the four of them, and the sound of Martha's labored breathing. Ashton took a slow step toward Sabine. He didn't look at the pan. He looked her in the eyes. "Tell me," Ashton said. "Tell me exactly what happened last night. And if you lie to me, Sabine Hoffman, I will destroy everything you have left." Sabine lowered the pan, her hands trembling. "I have nothing left to destroy," she whispered, "but I won't lie." The silence in the apartment was heavy, broken only by the rain that was still falling outside and Martha's wheezing from behind the sheet. Sabine took a breath. She told him everything. She spoke about the boy sitting alone in the booth, the shaking, the hunger. She told him about the $3. She told him about Ruka coming in, not as a father, but as a hunter. She described the terror in Leo's eyes when Ruka touched him. "I didn't know who he was," Sabine said, her voice steadying. "I didn't know he was a Kingsman. I just knew he was a scared little boy who didn't want to go with that man. So I ran. I wasn't stealing him, I was saving him." Ashton listened. He stood like a statue, his face unreadable. When she finished, Ashton turned to Ruka. "Is this true?" Ashton asked softly. Ruka laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Sir, are you really going to take the word of a waitress who lives in a literal dump over your head of security? She's spinning a fairy tale. I found the boy. She attacked me with coffee and snatched him." Ashton looked at Leo. He knelt down, heedless of the dirty floor ruining his bespoke suit pants. He was now eye level with his son. "Leo," Ashton said gently. "Look at me." Leo sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. He looked at his dad. "Did Ruka hurt you?" Leo nodded. He rolled up the sleeve of his oversized coat. On his upper arm there was a bruise. It was shaped perfectly, like 4 fingers and a thumb. A grip mark. Ashton stared at the bruise. His face went pale, then red, then a terrifying shade of white. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood up slowly. He turned to Ruka. "That's a grab mark," Ashton said. His voice was devoid of humanity. It was the voice of a machine. He was struggling, sir. I had to restrain him for his own safety." Ruka stammered, backing up toward the broken door. "You told me she kidnapped him," Ashton said, taking a step forward. "You told me she was dangerous. You mobilized a tactical team against a woman who gave my son a milkshake." "I was protecting the family reputation," Ruka yelled, his hand twitching near his gun. If people knew the kid ran away because he was unhappy, the stock would drop. I was doing my job." "Your job was to keep him safe," Ashton said, "not to act like a jailer." Ashton moved faster than a man of his size should be able to. He didn't punch Rooker. He didn't need to. He simply walked up to him, reached into Rooker's jacket, and ripped the security badge off his chest. "You're done," Ashton said. "And you're lucky I'm a businessman, not a gangster. Because if I were a different man, you wouldn't be walking out of this room." "You can't fire me," Rooker sneered, trying to regain some dominance. "I know too much. I know about the Singapore deal. I know about—" Ashton pulled out his phone. "Officer?" he said into the device. "Yes. The kidnapping report was false. However, I have a man here who I'd like to press charges against for child abuse and filing a false police report. Yes, he's right here." Ashton held the phone out. "The police are downstairs, Rooker, waiting by the elevator. I suggest you go surrender before I change my mind and let my personal security team handle your exit." Rooker looked at Ashton, then at Sabine. He spat on the floor near Sabine's feet, a final act of pettiness, and stormed out into the hallway. The tension broke. Ashton let out a long, shaky breath. He ran a hand through his hair, ruining his perfect styling. He looked at Sabine, really looked at her. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, the frayed collar of her uniform, the fierce set of her jaw, and he felt a wave of shame so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. "Ms. Hoffman," Ashton began, his voice hoarse. I don't know what to say." "You can start by fixing my door," Sabine said, though the fire had gone out of her voice. She was exhausted. Before Ashton could reply, a groan from the bed cut through the moment. "Sabine!" Martha gasped. "My chest!" Sabine dropped the skillet and rushed to the bed. She threw back the sheet. Martha was convulsing slightly, her skin clammy and cold. "Mom! Mom!" Sabine screamed, shaking her. "Stay with me!" "What's wrong with her?" Ashton asked, stepping closer, his concern shifting instantly. "She's diabetic," Sabine cried, checking her mother's pulse. "She's in shock. She needs insulin. I didn't have the money. I was going to get it today, but everything happened." She looked up at Ashton, her eyes pleading. The pride was gone. Only the daughter remained. "Please," she sobbed. "Please help her. She's dying." Ashton didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He tapped his earpiece. "Medical!" Ashton barked. "Get the medic team up here. Now, apartment 3B. We have a diabetic emergency. Code red. Prepare the chopper for medevac to St. Jude's." "Yes, sir," the voice in his ear crackled. Ashton moved to the bed. He took off his expensive coat and laid it over the shivering woman. He took Martha's hand. "Help is coming, Mom," Ashton said gently. "Hold on." Sabine watched him. This man, who 10 minutes ago had threatened to destroy her, was now holding her mother's hand, using his billions to save the only family she had left. "Why?" Sabine whispered. Ashton looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a raw vulnerability that no magazine cover had ever captured. He looked at Leo, who was holding Sabine's hand. "Because," Ashton said softly, "you saved my world for $3. The least I can do is save yours." The waiting room at St. Jude's Medical Center was quieter than a library and more comfortable than any hotel Sabine had ever visited. The floor was carpeted in plush cream wool, and the coffee was freshly ground, not burnt. But Sabine didn't care about the luxury. She only cared about the double doors at the end of the hall. She sat on the edge of a leather sofa, still wearing her stained waitress uniform, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. "She's going to be fine," a deep voice said. Sabine looked up. Ashton Kingsman stood there. He had discarded his ruined suit jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves. He held 2 cups of coffee. He looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man who had seen a ghost. "The doctors said her levels are stabilizing," Ashton continued, handing her a cup. "The insulin pump they installed is top of the line. She won't have to worry about injections again." Sabine took the cup, her hand shaking slightly. "How much will that cost?" Ashton sat down next to her, leaving a respectful distance. "It costs nothing. I own the hospital wing, Sabine." "I can't pay you back," Sabine whispered, looking into the dark liquid. "I don't have a job anymore. Todd fired me." Ashton's jaw tightened at the mention of the manager. "You don't owe me anything. In fact, I owe you. I looked at the security footage from the diner." Sabine froze. "You did? I saw you stand between my son and Rooker. I saw you give him the money. I had my team look into your finances, Sabine. I know you had $3 to your name, and you gave it to a stranger's child for a milkshake." Ashton turned to her, his blue eyes intense. "Why?" "He was hungry," Sabine said simply. "And he was sad. You don't need a bank account to know what sadness looks like." Ashton looked away, blinking rapidly. "I was so busy building a future for him that I forgot to be present in his today. I thought Rooker was keeping him safe. I didn't know I was paying a man to terrorize my own son." "Leo is a good kid," Sabine said. "He just misses his dad." "He won't have to miss me anymore," Ashton vowed. "I'm making changes, starting today." The doors opened. A doctor in a white coat stepped out, smiling. "Miss Hoffman? Your mother is awake. She's asking for you. And she's asking for the nice man in the coat." Sabine smiled through her tears. She stood up, but Ashton caught her hand gently. "Go see her," Ashton said. "Take all the time you need. I'll take Leo home. He's asleep in the car, but can I see you tomorrow?" "Why?" Sabine asked. "Because I have a business proposition for you," Ashton said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "And because Leo made me promise not to lose you." 2 days later, a black limousine pulled up to the curb of the Rusty Anchor. The rain had stopped, leaving Seattle scrubbed clean and bright under a rare autumn sun. But inside the diner, the atmosphere was stormier than ever. Todd was screaming at a new waitress for dropping a spoon. "You're clumsy and you're slow," Todd yelled, his face turning purple. "If you can't handle a spoon, how can you handle a rush? I should fire you right now." The diner door chimed. Todd spun around, ready to yell at a customer for interrupting his power trip. The words died in his throat. Ashton Kingsman walked in, wearing a suit that cost more than the building. Behind him was Sabine. She wasn't wearing her uniform. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that fit her perfectly, her hair styled loose and soft. She looked radiant. Todd gaped. "Hoffman! What are you doing here? I told you, you're fired. And you brought him?" Todd's eyes bulged as he recognized the billionaire. "Mr. Kingsman," Todd stammered, wiping his sweaty hands on his pants. "What an honor. A table for 2. The booth in the back is open." "We're not here to eat," Ashton said coolly. He didn't look at Todd. He looked around the diner, inspecting the peeling paint and the flickering light. "It's a bit of a dump, isn't it, Sabine?" "It has potential," Sabine said, her voice steady. She looked at Todd, not with fear, but with pity. "Potential," Ashton nodded. "That's why I bought it." Todd dropped his clipboard. You what?" "I bought the building," Ashton said, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "And the land, and the business license. As of 9 o'clock this morning, the Rusty Anchor is a subsidiary of Kingsman Hospitality." Todd laughed nervously. "Well, that's great news. I can show you the books, Mr. Kingsman. I have some great ideas for cutting costs. You won't be showing me anything, Ashton interrupted, because I'm not the manager. I'm just the investor. Ashton turned to Sabine. Ms. Hoffman is the new owner. Silence crashed into the room. The other waitresses stopped working. The fry cook peered out from the kitchen. Her? Todd squeaked. She's a waitress. She's a nobody. She's the woman who taught me the value of kindness, Ashton said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. And you are the man who fired her for saving my son. You have 5 minutes to clear out your office, Todd. If you're not gone by then, security will assist you. Todd looked at Sabine. He wanted to scream, to rage, but under Ashton's icy glare, he shrank. He grabbed his coat and ran past them, the bell chiming his defeat as he disappeared into the street. Sabine looked around the diner. It was still run down, still smelled of grease, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a canvas. Thank you, Sabine whispered to Ashton. It's not a gift, Ashton said softly. It's an investment. I expect the best milkshakes in Seattle. You'll get them, she promised. A small hand tugged on Sabine's dress. She looked down. Leo was there, grinning, holding a "Help Wanted" sign he had taken from the window. Can I help? Leo asked. I'm good at tasting. Sabine laughed, a sound that felt light and free. She looked at the billionaire and his son, the two people who had changed her world as much as she had changed theirs. You're hired, Sabine said, ruffling Leo's hair, but I can't pay you much. That's okay, Leo beamed, looking up at his dad. I'm already rich. Ashton put his arm around Sabine's shoulders, a gesture that promised more than just business. Yes, Ashton said, looking at the two of them. We certainly are. This story reminds us that kindness is the only currency that never loses its value. Sabine didn't see a billionaire heir. She saw a lonely child in need, and she gave everything she had, her last $3, to comfort him. In a world obsessed with status and power, it was a waitress's humanity that saved a broken family. It teaches us that you never know who you are helping, and that sometimes the smallest act of compassion can change your entire destiny. What would you have done if you were in Sabine's shoes? Would you have risked your job to help a stranger? Let me know in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like this video to support the channel, share it with your friends to spread the message of kindness, and subscribe for more powerful stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the drama.